Commission meeting. We are limited to discussion of items on the agenda, but if there is something that someone would like us to add to a future agenda, just get my attention. We will consider that request.
And Chair Buss, I apologize for interrupting. This is John Southard. Commissioner Garrison just called. Brittany, would you be able to send Commissioner Garrison the link? He's having difficulty locating the link. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I'm on it.
Thank you very much.
Right. Begin with the roll call. Commissioner Garrity is still trying to log on.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. You made it. Great. Commissioner Garrity is here. Commissioner Garrison?
So it was Commissioner Garrison who needs the link.
Oh, sorry, I got mixed them up.
All right.
All right, we'll come back to Commissioner Garrison in a moment. Commissioner Gilbert?
Present.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Larson?
I'm here.
Thanks. Commissioner Montero?
Present.
Commissioner Nucci?
Here.
All right, Commissioner Williams?
Present.
All right, and Commissioner Woodson?
Present.
Okay. Still working on Commissioner Garrison.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
As Commissioner Woodson, I just wanted to add or request if the commission will be considering the item that Officer Southard emailed to us last week regarding the RFP for the Hayden Mill property.
No, we won't be actually considering it today. We will just be informed later in the meeting that this is an issue coming up. Yeah. That'll be under staff updates. Go ahead, John.
Chair Buss and Commissioner Woodson, I would add, I believe, the last agenda item, and it is not agendized. It was issued on Friday. However, I believe the last agenda item, excuse me, I'm pulling it up, is future agenda items. So item 7 is future agenda items. So we can certainly discuss that. It will be part of item 6, the chair and updates, and certainly with item 7, Commissioner Woods, we can discuss when it is that we get something on agenda.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, John. Let's move on to consideration of meeting minutes. We have a recent meeting minute and an older one. The older one is for the June 9th meeting. And does anyone have any comments, corrections, additions on that? No? All right. I believe, if I recall right, the June 9th meeting, we only had 5 commissioners there. See if I can find that again. Yes, it was only 5 commissioners there. So it would just be those 5 commissioners that could make motions or vote on those meeting minutes, since those were the only 5 that were there. Would someone from the June 9th meeting like to make a motion regarding those meetings?
Commissioner Montero makes a motion to approve the June 9th meeting minutes.
All right. And is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Garrity.
All right, thank you. And I will vote yay on that. We have a dilemma here. Commissioner Ball was at the meeting, but he's no longer with us. Guess I need a ruling, John. Do we only have 4 members that are still here?
So Chair Buss, and I apologize, Commissioner Garrison is on the phone. I think it looks like Brittany just sent a link, maybe not. Brittany, and I apologize, this is not the answer to your question, Chair Buss. Would you please send an email with the password for Commissioner Garrison?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much. Chair Buss, I believe that while it is preferred and typically practiced that only those present vote, it is my understanding that in actuality all members can vote. It's again preferred that, or it's typically the preference of members that they not vote on minutes of meetings that they did not attend. But in a situation such as this, it is my understanding that yes, members can vote regardless of whether or not they did attend.
Okay, great. It's an issue that came up before. I think in the past, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, that they weren't able to vote. Well, let's go through the roll call then regarding the June 9th meeting minutes. Commissioner Garrity?
Yay.
Thank you. Commissioner Garrison is still trying to get on. Commissioner Gilbert?
I will abstain. I wasn't present.
All right. Commissioner Larson?
I'll vote yay. I was not present, but I'll still vote yay.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Montero?
I vote yay.
All right. Commissioner Nucci?
Yay.
Commissioner Williams?
I will abstain as I was not present for the meeting.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Woodson?
I will abstain.
All right. And as I already stated, I will vote aye. So I believe we have 5 then, including Commissioner Larson. So we have approval on the June 9th meeting minutes. Let's move on to the August 11th meeting minutes. Any additions, corrections to those?
This is Commissioner Williams. I wanted to make an addition. I know that it was probably not picked up during the introduction, but I did want to note in my under commission discussion when we did our introductions, I would like to add that she is Akmel Autumn, which is AKIMEL O''ODHA.
Okay. Any other changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just minor correction on my introductory statement. The numbers in there are slightly off. I've been a resident for 27 years, not 17 years, and I've worked for the community for 24 years, not 14 years. And just the spelling on the last sentence of my introductory there, the director for the Cultural Resource Management Program for the Gila River Indian Community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other corrections or additions?
Yeah, Chair Buss, this is Commissioner Larson. Under number 1, voting of the meeting minutes, I am showing as absent. And do not recall being absent from the meeting minutes that were voted on. And I was definitely there at the meeting. I'm not sure why I would show as absent.
That is odd.
And I
So
recall voting.
I can answer that. You came in late for part of the meeting because you were having trouble logging on.
Oh, that's right. Okay. No other comment then. Sorry.
All right.
I just have one correction. In that same section, my name is spelled Lawrence. Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Montero. And any others? No? All right. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the August 11th, 2021 meeting minutes with corrections just stated?
Commissioner Montero makes a motion to approve the August 11th, was it? Meeting minutes with corrections.
All right, thank you. And do we have a second?
Commissioner Larson, I'll second.
All right, thank you. We'll go through our list here. Commissioner Garrity?
I approve.
All right, thank you. Is Commissioner Garrison with us yet, or he's still working on that? Still working on it. Okay, Commissioner Gilbert,
Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Larson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montero,
Aye.
Commissioner Nucci,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Woodson,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. All right, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to agenda item number 3, Broadway Curve Art Proposal. We have a representative from ADOT, is that correct, John?
Chair Buss, that is correct. As the commission may recall, last month during the staff updates portion of the meeting, in updating the commission on the Section 106 consultation request that had been received and responded to, I mentioned that there was a consultation request for art for the Broadway curve area of the I-10 project. Subsequent to the meeting, I had a request from Commissioner Williams that we invite a representative of ADOT to share more about the project, and we're very fortunate this evening to have Dr. Will Russell of ADOT for a presentation, and I believe Will has a PowerPoint that he can share, and if there happen to be issues, Brittany has a copy of that PowerPoint, so we could display it in that way. But let's give Will a shot first to display it from his computer. That way he can control the timing and things. Brittany, would you be so kind as to allow Will access? Thank you. Will, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll start off by saying I understand that the main thrust of interest that the commission had for tonight deals with the aesthetic or artistic components of this project. My involvement with those is limited to the context of compliance with federal historic property laws. And so I do have some involvement with that, and I'll go through that, but please take note that this is basically my perspective coming from an archaeological standpoint. Well, I got it to come up, but I'm not sure how to advance it. Would somebody on that end be able to help? Oh.
You know, oh, there you go. I was going to say, Chair Buss and Will, I often find that WebEx commands a pretty hefty amount of resources from the computer. So when you do have a PowerPoint, sometimes it's just a bit slower than it might otherwise be, which is frustrating, but seems to be the case consistently.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so as many of you may know, the Broadway Curve project involves the widening of I-10 between the I-17 and State Route 202 interchanges. They're going to be widening up to 16 lanes total. It's a large-scale project, involves what we call an environmental assessment, which is a National Environmental Policy Act process wherein the government takes into account all sorts of different potential effects of a project on the environment. This is what we call a federal undertaking, which means it's a project that involves federal monies and or authorizations or permissions. And there, per 25 U.S.C. 327, Congress has given the state of Arizona's Department of Transportation federal authority to act on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration. And as a federal undertaking, this project is subject to Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So the Section 106 process, some of you may be more familiar with others, but it involves essentially a process that revolves around consultation. Within this process, the first step is inventory. That is, we need to find out what cultural resources are within the project area. We need to assess them for their eligibility for the National Register of Historic Properties, and also determine whether the project will have no adverse effect or adverse effect upon the properties that are in the area. And assuming that there are historic properties in the area, we first try to avoid those. And in the case of this project, we've thus far been successful at avoiding a traditional cultural property. In those cases where we can't avoid historic properties, we try to minimize the destruction. And there is a large hula dump site that intersects with this project on US 60, and we're doing our best to forward monitoring all work within the site and hoping to avoid, minimize damage there. And the kind of last line of defense is what is called in the law mitigation. And it's an unfortunate term. We understand that this doesn't really mitigate the damage that's occurred to sites, but that's the wording that we're left with. And in this case, the mitigation established through consultation for this project was the excavation of archaeological sites. As far as the aesthetics, a couple months ago, I received these drawings here, and this is what you may have seen. It went out for Section 106 consultation. Starting on the left side, you see some different snake representations above lizard or horned toad. Moving to the right, we have what archaeologists have called flying bird motifs. Up the top, we can see a bowl interior design. Under that, there are some running geometric patterns, and on the right, there are some floral depictions. So this went out for consultation to all of our consulting parties on the project. We have a delay again, I think, but yeah. So the only feedback we received at that time was from the 4 southern tribes, which comprises the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, the Gila River Indian Community, the Ak-Chin Indian Community, and the Tohono Nation. And we were asked that for any given structure, such as one bridge, that only one of the flying bird designs be used. So if there are numerous birds on a bridge, they'll all be identical. And we committed to honoring that request. And project management subsequently elected to use the 4th bird motif there consistently throughout the project. Within the last week, it was brought to my attention that there were additional aesthetic elements shown here that had not been brought to my office's attention. So we're going to be doing a follow-up round of Section 106 consultation to distribute these. These are stylized prickly pear fruit. Have an inset there for comparison. And you can see the map on the right shows 3 pedestrian bridge locations where these would be installed atop the enclosed bridges. I was contacted during the initial aesthetics consultation by the cities of Tempe and Phoenix, and they had what I think is a wonderful idea, which would be to involve descendant artists in the process of designing the aesthetics for large-scale projects like this. I've had the chance to speak with some of the 4 Southern Tribes representatives, and they fully support this. My office completely supports this. We approached project management and requested to engage with Native artists in the region and build a collaborative platform here. We were told initially there were some concerns about money. My office offered to assist with any costs incurred, and we were then advised that it was more a matter of time. So although I haven't given up necessarily, and we will have some more opportunities to revisit the question of mitigation and what's appropriate mitigation for this project, and that may or may not involve collaboration of this nature, but we don't quite know yet. So that kind of in broad strokes sums up my involvement with the artistic elements on this project, but I'm happy to field any questions, and I may have answers, or if not, we can certainly find them.
I have a question. Thanks for the presentation. This is Commissioner Montero. It's sort of maybe a rhetorical question. Does your project management team there understand Section 106 consultation, that the whole purpose is to get this kind of input and implement it or try to implement it?
That's a good question. I would like to say that they're slowly coming to understand the ramifications of Section 106. A project, this isn't an excuse, but a project of this size and complexity, it ends up being there ends up being a lot of education along the way. So I'm working toward that end. One of the issues on this project is that someone with enough knowledge of Section 106 to be dangerous, as they say, pointed out that the quote-unquote mitigation for the adverse effect has already been negotiated. It did not include any element along these lines. Without getting into too many specifics, I think that the issue of additional adverse effects may be forthcoming, and that would kind of open everything back up for more discussions at that point.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions for Will?
This is Commissioner Williams.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to ask Will, when will ADOT make a final decision for the Broadway Curve Art?
It's a good question. I think in their mind, they kind of already have, but as you and I and others in the meeting know, that's not legally the case yet. I'm hoping this week or next week to get the next round of consultation out on the artwork. And because it's nothing to do with the artwork in particular, but it is intervisible with the TCP on this project. And so ADOT looks forward to the perspective of descendant communities. And I'm not in any hurry to close this or any round of consultation out before we have meaningful discussion on it. Not sure, does that answer your question, Ruben?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
No? No? All right. Thanks,
I have
Christopher.
one more question. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
can you show us the slide with the prickly pears again and just tell us a little bit about what they're supposed to be made of? They're like those things on top of the bridge.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can you still see the presentation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I'm not involved in the development of these, but it's my understanding that these, with the purple projections there, are representative of the fruit on prickly pear cactus.
Okay. But do you know what they are? Like, do they have a function besides the art? I'm just
So not,
curious.
I don't believe so. Not that I'm
Sorry.
aware of.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your coming and presenting to us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, well, we will move on then to agenda item number 4, Character Area 1, draft presentation.
Yes, Chair Buss, I'm looking at the list here of participants. It looks as if we have Robbie, Aaron, I believe, well, I don't see Ambika. Robbie, will you be leading the presentation on this?
Yeah, I will be leading the presentation, and Bika is currently leading another presentation, so I will be
Okay.
doing this one.
Excellent. So as the commission will recall from past presentations, Character Area 1 is northern Tempe, that is north of the river. This character area process has been carried out for most at this point of the various character areas throughout the city. There is now a draft for the Character Area 1 plan, and Robbie will be discussing the process and the draft and seeking input. So with that, Robbie, it's all yours.
Thank you, John. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Robbie Aaron. I am a long-range planner in the Planning Division of Community Development, and I'll be going over the Character Area 1 Papago North Tempe draft plan. We might be waiting on my screen to change. There we go. I'm going to go over, for those that haven't been a part of one of these before, as I know you have some newer members that may not have been around in the last presentation. So I'll go over a quick intro to character area planning, what the contents are. I'll review the outcomes of the surveys that we did over summer and earlier on in the year. This year, go over the draft plan content and a few examples, and then talk about the next steps. And then I'll open it up for comment. This is our branding for it. I'm going to go through this kind of quick. A character area plan is a high-level policy plan. There's a scope for the plan. It's a high-level vision for the area. It's a long-term plan that identifies the it's a long-term vision that's identified for the area by the residents, the business community, and other stakeholders, such as nonprofits and faith groups that we've reached out to. We identify character-defining elements such as the history, open spaces, parks such as Papago Park, the typical landscapes in the area. So in this area would be a typical desert landscape, cultural resources, other historic preservation elements that are in the area, such as post-World War II subdivisions, other historic properties in the area. And then from all that, we create design goals and principles. There's some examples there, such as shade, walkability, bikeability, green infrastructure, sustainability, historic preservation is one. And then we run that through a participatory process. We've had virtual and in-person meetings. We've done a lot of surveys. We've had focus groups. We've presented to a number of boards and commissions, which I'll go over. And then we take all those inputs and we turn them into a character plan. So there are 8 character areas. The ones that are solid colored, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 are already completed. Numbers 2 and 6 will come in the future, and number 1 that's hatched up top, as John said, everything north of the 202, and the orange hatching is character area 1, which is what we're currently working on. Citywide statistics, it's approximately 3.35 square miles of the entire city, about 8%. We have some new population numbers that came from the 2020 census. Comprise about 5.4% of the entire city, and which is about the same as it was previously. And the median household income, as you'll see, is kind of the one thing that's a little bit less than the city, but everything else tends to run about the same as most of the other character areas. So we had, as I said, we had 2 kickoff meetings early in the year in March. We had public surveys for preferences, and then we had 2 public meetings in May. And then after those 2 public meetings, we had a couple in-person meetings at Papago Park on June 14th and June 26th, and 2 focus group meetings, one with the local business community up there, and one with the nonprofits and other faith organizations that are in the area. And then we also did a Dotocracy survey from May 11th to June 30th. We've presented to numerous boards and commissions, and the draft plan was released on August 26, 2021, in concert with the release of the council work study agenda as we went to council for their work study session on August 30th. The comment period is currently slated to be open through September 19th. So for the first public survey, these are just a couple of examples of responses that we got. A lot of people were in North Tempe are very interested in being outside. So it was no surprise to us that streetscapes and park enhancements and canal side trails and multi-use paths kind of rose to the top. But then you can see that, you know, they do support preservation and public art. And then there was a lot of other things that they were commented on. We also received a lot of input on the transient population and other security issues that are more out of the realm of this plan, but we did forward those concerns on to the departments that typically address those concerns, and we did make them aware of them. We also asked what kind of land uses they would like to see. As like I said before, they're very kind of, they really like open space, as you can see, and then with residential, more focus on residential after that. These are just examples of the postcards that we sent out. We send out thousands of them, one to every property owner. And then we also send them to, we also have a list of multifamily developments that we send to as well. So we really try and make sure that the outreach is done, and we do this for pretty much every public meeting that we've had. Another example of outreach efforts, this is an example of the Dotocracy. We use Facebook, Twitter, we use Nextdoor, and we also use an email blast through MailChimp that sends out emails and other engagements to try and get people to participate in the process. So for the Dotocracy survey, these are examples of what they voted on. This time it was pretty much all done online through the forum. Everybody gets 10 dots in Dotocracy, and these are examples of what they were voting on. I'll go through them kind of quickly, but we had pictures and we had what it was, and then a small description of each of the different things that priorities that were being voted on. So after that, these are our dot accuracy responses, and these responses kind of inform what goes into the plan. The top response was shade, and then followed by extreme heat management and landscape. And then it kind of goes on down from there. We had 106 respondents, which for us is a lot. I know it doesn't sound like very much, but it is. This is one of the highest participation plans that I've been a part of since I've been here. So that's really good. We also reached out to the younger generation at Laird Elementary and asked them to participate in dot accuracy. The teachers and the principal were really excited about this and kind of got some of the students to participate. So we had 60 respondents from there, and a lot of their responses really lined up with what the responses from the general public survey came back as well. So, but it was good to reach out to them and get them involved, as this is as much their plan as it is anybody else's, and they're the future. So draft plan content. So if you haven't had the chance to read it, you can find the draft plan on tempe.gov /character areas. There's a link to it. There's also a link to the survey to take. Feel free to come through it and read through it and find any mistakes that spelling errors, whatever it may be that you find, and feel free to comment on it. You can, email me. You can email Bika. I'll have my emails at the end. You can comment online with things, or you can give us a call if you so choose. So there is intro, purpose of the plan, existing character. These are kind of the sections. We talk about the public process that we went through, and we go into the planning and design principles. There's 15 of them. And then we have the appendices, which will go over like the historic plant palette for the area. It'll have images that define the character of the area, the additional images other than those that are throughout the plan. And then it'll have select some of the socioeconomic data that we used, and then also have all of the public input summaries linked into there. So one of the areas that you guys are interested in, obviously, is historic preservation. So I really want to talk about that. We have an entire section on preservation, but we also tried to weave in preservation and the history of the area throughout the rest of the plan. So the resources that we know are up there are Eisendrath House, the O'Connor House. We know the Crosscut Canal Power Plant is there. And then there's also other areas such as the Loma del Rio archaeology site that we know are there, the WPA structures at Moore Park. So I really tried to look at the what was there and what's been there, and then build off of that. So some images of the existing character on the O'Connor House, top left, some of the WPA structure at Moore Park, Eisendrath, bottom right, and then some of the post-World War II subdivisions that are up there that really make up a vast majority of the neighborhoods in the area. So here's the 15 design principles and elements. Starting with we broke everything up into 4 sub areas. Each of the sub areas kind of has its own intricacies within it, and so we go into those preservation, and then preserving neighborhood character, all the way down to public health friendly planning, which is something that we've gone over. We've added this year in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that we all are going through. So here's an example of one of the design principles. This is our preamble. Talks about the history of Character Area 1, the settlement and its existence of the historic canal, and that's really built around, and the related artifacts and other resources. And then we get into the design principles like promoting preservation of historic buildings, pre- and post-war subdivisions, and the sacred sites such as archaeological sites and buttes, all the way down to I'm not going to read all of these, but continuing to conduct a multifamily housing survey or other housing survey to identify eligible properties for designation. So there's a lot of the preservation section takes up an entire page and has what is, I think, 11 principles in it, and then there's also other principles throughout the plan that also relate to preservation. So next steps and timelines. We've been to 10 boards and commissions. We've been to a couple twice. We went to the Neighborhood Advisory Commission twice. We are here at the Historic Preservation Commission for the second time. And we will go to DRC at least one more time before we go to council. Our goal is to get to council late this year or early next year, hopefully late this year. But we have the ability to extend it to early 2022 if need be, as sometimes the draft plan and public review takes time, and that's okay. So time for questions and discussions. These are our emails, and Bika and I are the main project team, and we work with Shauna and Brenda in neighborhood services to really, they really help us with our outreach and making sure that everybody gets a postcard or anything to know they want to know about the plan. So I'm here. I'll take questions. I'll take comments. If you just, I'm just here to listen now. And so if anybody has questions, let me know.
Thanks, Robbie. Anyone have any questions for Robbie?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
it's Commissioner Nucci. Robbie, do you get a sense that there's a preservation priority in the neighbors, amongst the neighbors in this character area?
If I'm being 100% honest, Joe, I know there's a preservation priority for some of the neighbors. I would say that it's not necessarily all of the neighbors.
Yeah, I got a sense from your explanation that this is an outgoing or an outdoor oriented group, at least the group that responded to the outreach that you've conducted so far. So the open space and the natural landscapes, I'm sure, are a strong priority. But a lot of the history, especially in the Papago Park area, it's not only is it unique with the Civilian Conservation Corps projects and what the city's been able to add to that over the decades, but it's certainly part of that outdoor lifestyle and well integrated. So I'm just going to remind everybody that the condition of the infrastructure, the historic infrastructure in Papago Park, is deteriorating, and there's an urgency. I know this is not the CIP process where those things could be funded, but I'm hoping that this character area planning will step lightly on that and consider that, and consider the timeliness of that as well. That's all I had to add. Thank you. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Any other questions for Robbie? No? All right. Well, thank you very much, Robbie, for your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Buss. And if anybody comes up with comments or questions after they get a chance to read the plan, feel free to reach out. We're always here.
All right, we'll do that.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to agenda item number 5, Historic Preservation Plan updates.
Thank you, Chair Buss. Brittany, if you would please allow me to share.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you. Backtrack here a bit. Okay, can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay. So this is yet another update on the Historic Preservation Plan update. As mentioned at the last meeting, where there are recommendations relating to process to city-owned properties, to the operations, we had subsequent meetings with the two of the four southern tribes, being the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community and Gila River Indian Community Tribal Historic Preservation Offices, and the Pasquayaki Historic Preservation Office, Tribal Historic Preservation Office, along with the Guadalupe Historical Society. We've had now 2 meetings with both Salt River and Gila River, 1 meeting with Pasquayaki and the Guadalupe Historical Society. We have at this point another meeting scheduled with Pasquayaki on Thursday, although it looks as if because of some scheduling issues that may need to be moved. We do also have another meeting on the books with both Salt River and Gila River. And really the point of these meetings has been to ensure that we understand to the best of our ability and incorporate tribal perspective, incorporate components into the historic preservation plan that are perhaps outside of what one might consider when looking at preservation in a very traditional sense, that is the built environment, historic buildings alone, incorporate practices that have really become very widespread and accepted throughout the field, landscape, cultural resource management, etc., and ensuring that these viewpoints are taken into account. I have some bullet point items here and also a list to accompany them. Bullet points should be up in just a moment here. Or not. There we are. So one of the requests that we heard was codify meaningful consultation protocols for non-Section 106 projects. There is a disparity that has been identified between Section 106 projects and projects that do not have that federal nexus and do not entail Section 106 consultation. The 4 Southern Tribes have made available online the government-to-government consultation toolkit. So we have the resources available. It is being asked that we do really make a practice and formalize the practice of engaging in consultation for non-Section 106 projects. One of the concerns voiced was also that they would like to have a dedicated individual or group that is tasked with this as relates to cultural resource issues, so not other government-to-government conversations, but strictly cultural resource issues, the tribal liaison, if you will, as relates to cultural resource matters. There was some discussion, and for those of you in the field, you may understand that well, there is perhaps some hesitancy or some question as to how such a thing may be accomplished, but there was some discussion of whether or not there could be drafting implementation of an agreement similar to a PA, not a PA, but identifying standard courses of action that the city takes and in which context in which areas, et cetera, it may be acceptable to kind of document in writing protocol, thereby creating a more efficient means of having the discussions and coming to an understanding. There was also a great deal of discussion regarding private developers. It is understood that as it stands, the Tempe Historic Preservation Ordinance does not require private developers to mitigate private land, even within a site. That said, it is believed that there's a great deal that could be shared with private developers as relates to context of the environment that they're working in, the sensitivity, and legal requirements related to their project site and their proposed work, things that they need to know, things that frankly may be of benefit to them to understand. So how we could go about implementing something of that nature. Also, and this relates to really all development, a request to consider viewshed and indirect effects when evaluating projects proposed for identify areas of concern. The indirect effects, there's certainly been talk over the years really of the butte and views to and from the butte, the impact of buildings, fact lines, things of that nature. The point was raised that with our land acknowledgement that was approved by the City Council at the beginning of this year, there is a pledge in there to take cultural matters and affiliation into account when considering all efforts. So there has been a request to look at that. Also a request to consider curation at Uhugan Key Museum when appropriate. Consider if not prioritize. I know that with the recent opening of the repository there, from what I understand, they're still looking at how they'll go about accepting items, determining what to accept, curation, what have you. But that is something that has been requested of us. In addition, providing a full report and documentation of evaluation and consultation processes that we employ for projects to include procedures for identification and compliance with professional standards, including those mandated by relevant permitting agencies. There's additional discussion. This is, of course, an ongoing talk. As I mentioned, there is another meeting with both Salt River and Gila River and another meeting with Pasquayaki. But a lot of the concerns have to do with the impact of projects on not just archaeological sites, but also cultural resources, traditional cultural properties, things that to this point have not received, I would say, widespread consideration or have not been considered in any uniform manner. So viewshed, other indirect effects, and that's an overview of the discussions that have been had to date. We have had a great deal of input on the tribal perspectives component of the historic preservation plan that will be added. And I'm grateful to members of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community and Gila River Indian community tribal historic preservation offices who have assisted Andy Darling, the consultant with Southwest Heritage Research, on drafting and then refining this. This is something that we want to get right. This is something that we want to ensure is available so that context can be understood and, of course, available to the degree appropriate. So there's a great deal of discussion about what should or should not be included, but I believe this to be the foundation of a very good primer as to context for those seeking to develop within Tempe or those managing projects, be they private developers or public employees. So I look forward to hopefully being able to come to the commission with something substantive as soon as next month after we have these next meetings here. This is really the final component of the discussion or consultation in this case with tribes and discussion with others who are stakeholders. There will be, I believe, a second public meeting on October 20th. I'll send that information to the commission. It will, again, likely be virtual. I believe it has been scheduled as a virtual meeting, but at that point it is anticipated that the public will have an opportunity to review the draft, make comments, and we will proceed from there. And I'd be happy to address any questions or comments.
It's a quiet crowd tonight.
Thank you, John. Commissioner Montero here. It looks really, it looks really comprehensive, and I have a question about the cultural sensitivity training. I mean, you probably don't have much information on how that would be done at this point, or?
Chair Bus, Commissioner Montero, no, we don't have specifics. There is a desire to ensure that all City of Tempe employees have that opportunity to learn, gain the context, the environment in which they work, whether they be an individual who completes maintenance on the butte or someone who plans and manages a city project up to the highest level, those who green light large projects and kind of craft general direction for the city. But no, there is not at this point any specificity as to what that program would look like. I would hope and I would anticipate that it would be in close collaboration with the CST program trainers from Salt River, but at this point it's difficult to say for sure. I know that everyone is stretched thin as it relates to time and resources, so that is something that we would have to partner with the 4 Southern tribes to really hammer out.
Do you have any kind of mechanism in the city for training, for diversity training and things like that? I know we do in Phoenix, and we have in the past made the training, something you could sign up for and get credit, for the city, so that people, could put it on their performance reviews and things like that. It's just.
Well, Chair Bus, Commissioner Montero, there are certainly programs that are offered, and as the Commission may know, I suspect some of you do, the Cultural Sensitivity Program for Salt River has recently been made available online. So that is certainly something that could be shared. Perhaps there's some tweaking that would be either required or beneficial, because at the moment it is geared toward those who are going to work within the community. But yes, they do have a online program now, and that is something that we could look at. It would be very easily accessible. Wouldn't entail the logistical challenges of scheduling groups of employees to attend at one location at one time. So that's certainly something that we can and should explore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Bush.
Yes, go ahead.
Steve Abrahamson here, City of Tempe. I know that we are within the Community Development Department beginning a program called Humanity in the Workplace. I can work with John and see if perhaps a session can be applied to boards and commissions, or specifically the Historic Preservation Commission. I'll follow up with John.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Steve.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? All right, well, thank you very much, John. Let's move on to agenda item 6, chair and staff updates. I have nothing to present. What about you, John?
Thank you, Chair Buss. Waiting for it to come up here, but it's just the title card. We are very fortunate in the sense that we're going to have the Historic Preservation Conference here in Tempe, October 27th through 29th. I believe there may be a pre-conference training day, and then on Saturday there will be various tours available, and on Sunday, which I believe is Halloween, there will be a, there we are finally. Yep. There we go. On Halloween, there is a tour in Double Butte Cemetery. So we have a lot of activities coming up. As the Commission may recall, at the beginning of this year, working with SHPO, we obtained certified local government grants to fund camp training for commissioners. Camp is a group that comes in and trains commissioners on historic preservation practice, law, and kind of operational best practices, ensuring that meetings are held and decisions are made in a defensible manner, how best to avoid allegations of decisions being arbitrary and capricious, et cetera, et cetera. So the City Council graciously approved the request to accept and process the grant as a pass-through for the Arizona Preservation Foundation, who will be sponsoring or coordinating rather, the camp trainers, in addition to covering the registration costs for camp for commissioners throughout the state. It is a process where there are, of course, a relatively limited number of seats available. That said, because the City of Tempe worked with the State Historic Preservation Office to secure the grant and has subsequently worked with the Arizona Preservation Foundation to disperse the grant, the State Historic Preservation Office has very generously offered a guarantee that all members of the Tempe Commission are eligible and will receive sponsorship funding should they wish to attend. So I want to make that note, or note that also conference registration is now available on the conference website. If any of you plan to stay at the conference hotel, the DoubleTree by Hilton, formerly the Fiesta Inn on Priest and Broadway, I would encourage you to book your room now. I believe the conference rate is $115 per night, but please do go in and register because of various challenges this year, to include not working with Dave Ryder, the conference organizer that SHPO has worked with for many years now, and the kind of ongoing uncertainty as to what the pandemic situation would be at this point. There has been, well, planning has occurred perhaps a bit slower than normal, so registration has just been made available. The conference is next month, so I would encourage everyone to go in and register there. There will be events in Tempe, of course. The Adobe Tour is on. There will be an event at the Hayden House. It will be, I think, a great conference, and the training will be top-notch. For those of you who have attended conferences the last 5 or 6 years, you may recall that they had some real jokers as the CLG trainers. Here we actually have professionals. And for those of you who don't know about jokers, I was one of them. Really, I suppose the big piece of news, and this was distributed via email on Friday at the request of Economic Development a request for proposals for redevelopment of the Hayden Flour Mill property was issued. I believe submissions need to be made by November 4th of this year, so there is time for interested parties to get proposals together and submit them. I anticipate that this is something that the Commission will want to be and certainly will be very involved with as it moves forward. That's, at this point, all I have for staff updates. Lots of kind of background activity work continues at the Eisendrath House, et cetera. Archaeological mitigation at Tempe Depot continues. Of course, spending a great deal of time on the Historic Preservation Plan update and various other tasks, but really nothing substantive aside from what I've shared thus far.
John, I saw the RFP was very short, very general. Do we have any idea of what the city is wanting developers not to do?
Chair Buss, I would certainly, if there is a preference against something, I believe that would be captured in the RFP. As I recall, the RFP has language identifying what some know as the 1180 line as the boundary for redevelopment. I know that it voices a preference for retaining criterion C eligibility. So I suppose that, I hope, at least is an answer to your question. By nature of the request, they typically don't explicitly spell out or exclude things. It's a process in which ideas and concepts and potential partners are sought.
Right. Well, that comment helped a little.
Yeah, John, I had just a concern about the word that you just said, preferred. The city prefers that the National Register values be maintained, but it's not really like a requirement. I think it should be. I mean, given the history of that area, the prehistory, the view shed, there's so much. I just wanted to make that comment.
Chair Buss, Commissioner Montero, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Well, this is Commissioner Garrity. I just wanted to say, I was just a little surprised this came out without really, it's arguably the most significant historic era resource in the city, certainly one of them, if not the most. We weren't really involved with the drafting of that language. Would have been nice to have been kind of, if we had a role in it, or at least were consulted about it. But is there a path for, I don't want to say making changes, but adding some teeth to some instead of like a recommendation? Do you think there will be a path in the future to kind of put some stronger language, kind of ensuring historic preservation considerations are taken into account?
So Chair Buss, Commissioner Garrity, as relates to the RFP specifically, to my knowledge, there's not a process, or at least a commonly used process, to go in and amend the language. Certainly, should there be a respondent that's selected, at that point, the city would engage in negotiations for development agreement, planning entitlements, things of that nature, and could make very clear desires at that point, how that may be received by respondents who initially saw the word prefer. I don't know, but to my knowledge, there's no common process by which one can go in and amend language in an RFP that has been issued.
Thanks, John. I guess I was thinking more at a later stage, we'll have opportunities to kind of weigh in on what actually gets, what actually happens. It's obviously too late for the RFP. But
And Chair Buss, Commissioner Garrity, as a reminder, of course, the flour mill is listed in the Tempe Historic Property Register, so alterations, development, etc., will require Historic Preservation Commission approval. There is in the ordinance an appeal process. Should the HPC not approve, there is an opportunity to appeal then on the part of the applicant to the City Council. But certainly the HPC will be, I would imagine, very involved at that point in the development process, depending upon whether or not the Historic Preservation Tax Credit is sought, the 20% credit for qualified rehabilitation expenses. That I suspect would influence quite a bit the degree of involvement of not only the Commission and the State Historic Preservation Office and the Department of Interior National Park Service in DC, but also the 4 Southern tribes, given the fact that from what we learned with the streetcar discussion, Tempe Butte, the TCP, there's not a hard and fast boundary or border in the sense that many may be accustomed to. As Shane Antone, the Salt River Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, told me in response to a question regarding the TCP limits for the Butte, he would consider it to be from the sky to the surface, to the subsurface, to the water. So rather broad. So I suppose should there be a desire on the part of the developer to obtain the tax credits, at that point, in addition to the Commission, again, you would have State Historic Preservation involvement, State Historic Preservation Office involvement, because it's within an archaeological site and city-owned land, ASM involvement, National Park Service involvement, and I would imagine 4 Southern tribes involvement as well.
okay, thank you very much.
John, do you anticipate this being some kind of an agenda item at the next meeting? And if so, will it just be a general discussion among the Commission, or do you think that we will be waiting for the results of the RFP and then have the Commission react to what the city is pursuing?
Chair Buss, that I'm not aware of any prohibition on agendizing a discussion of this at a future meeting. I suspect well, I will say I don't know process and considerations as relates to an outstanding RFP at this point, since it has been issued. What can or cannot be discussed. It is a public setting, so I would imagine that that information would be accessible to all and therefore not create an unfair advantage. I'd have to confirm that, but certainly the Commission, should they desire to see it agendized at a future meeting, and look into what can be discussed and when and by whom, and accommodate the request to the best of our abilities.
All right. And what is that? I didn't notice a date on the RFP.
Chair Buss, I believe the middle date, so it was issued on Friday, the 10th of September. I believe submittals are to be in by November 4th.
All right. So not very far in the future, right? About a month and a half.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Woodson, yes.
Yeah, if you or John could explain. So the RFP does have a couple things that I'd like to maybe have a little bit more explanation about. So it does indicate that the RFP will be reviewed by the Commission. So could you maybe explain in what capacity we're going to be reviewing this, and in what level of authority we might have in providing response and or approval or what have you for this RFP. And the second thing is, could you comment on the comment in the RFP that the city will seek to remain the owner and the ultimate steward of the flour mill? Is that going to be a requirement for the project, or is it just a preference?
So Chair Buss, Commissioner Woodson, I would in the staff update section suggest that we not delve too deeply into any items. I will tell you, I don't have the answer as to the language regarding the HPC and the review of submissions made in response to the RFP. I'd be happy to inquire about that and get back to the commission. Ultimately, in terms of ownership, that's going to be a decision made by the city council. In the past, as with bomb development last time around, there was a long-term lease that was executed. I know if a developer is seeking historic preservation tax credits, the lease must be at least 39 years. That said, ultimately, that is the decision of the city council.
All right, thanks, John.
John, I have just another comment. I'm glad Commissioner Garrity asked the question about what's our path forward for dealing with something like this. And it sounds like, you know, we can't do anything at this point to, you know, with the RFP, we can't comment on it, it's out. But it is a concern that it went out without us having a chance to review it and comment on it, when that's, you know, why we're here. So I just want to make that comment. And if we agendize this, you know, next month, we could discuss at least that part of it, you know, if not the details of the RFP, the details of how this went out without us getting a chance to look at it and comment.
Chair Buss, Commissioner Montero, absolutely. And I will look into what restrictions may exist as relates to what can be discussed and when, but I would think there would be no prohibition on the commission discussing process in general for city-owned historic resources and you know, desired level of involvement.
Thank you.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on this?
Mr. Chair, if I might, John, could you maybe describe like how across the street with the Hayden House, how was that agreement set up?
So there was no RFP as there is here. It was privately owned. Monty's, the restaurant, was sold to a group of developers, a partnership. They did enter into a development agreement with the city, so they were seeking a planned area development approval. They did enter into a development agreement. There was some negotiation there. I started with the city on November 17th, 2014, which was the day that Monty's closed. At that point, there was a, well, the project had been designed and was moving forward to, as I recall, the Development Review Commission and then City Council. We brought it to the December 2014 Historic Preservation Commission meeting because the Hayden House is listed in the Tempe Historic Property Register. At that point, there was a fair amount of back and forth, and come 2018, a development agreement and amended PAD was prepared and approved after a great deal of discussion with the Historic Preservation Office and Historic Preservation Commission, and the development agreement had the support of the Historic Preservation Commission. The amended planned area development, of course, required as relates to the designated portion of that property at least, the approval of the Historic Preservation Commission, which it received. I can't speak to the process up to the point where I started in my role, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else that had any questions or comments on this? All right. John, did you have any other announcements for us, or was that all?
No, that is all, Chair Buss.
Okay. And do we have any announcements from any commissioners they'd like to make? No?
I have one. Tomorrow evening, the Arizona Archaeological Society Phoenix chapter meeting is being held virtually, and Dr. Kyle Woodson will be giving a presentation. If anyone is interested in getting the link, please reach out to me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Was there anyone else?
Chair Buss, we do have Jared Smith of the Tempe History Museum. He may or may not have announcements or updates related to the museum.
Hi, John, Chair Buss. Basically, there's not a whole lot to announce at this moment, except I would encourage folks to visit the museum's website, Tempe History Museum. Just do a Google search, or just go to our website and look at what I would recommend is look at the Tempe 150 page, because it talks about the Tempe 150 sesquicentennial event. And as John mentioned, there's a series of events coming up with that, including the Double Butte Cemetery tour on Sunday, October 31st. There's an opening of the Tempe 150 exhibit at the museum on Wednesday, November 3rd. Friday, November 5th, there's a ticketed event for the Tempe Legends reception. And on Sunday, November 7th, there's the signature event for the Tempe 150th or sesquicentennial event that's going to be from 12 noon to 6 p.m. So, but what I would really do is recommend that you go to the museum's website and look at the Tempe 150 page, and that'll basically answer those questions. But so aside from all that, nothing else to add, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions anyone has, or if you want to email me at the museum in the coming week or so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other announcements,
And so, Chair Buss, I take it from the discussion in item 6 that there's a desire on the part of the commission to look into agendizing the flour mill, or at least RFP process.
yes, I think there would be. Yeah. I don't know what it is that we can do.
Thank you, Chair Buss, for the clarification.
Anyone have any last comments? No. All right. Well, then let's call this September 13th, 2021 Historic Preservation Commission meeting concluded. Our time is 7:27. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone. Have a good evening.
All right.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.